Welcome to Living That DMV Life, your ultimate guide to the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area, brought to you by Van Meter Homes. And now, the man who's been living the DMV life his entire life, Ernie Kyger.
It might be easy to take for granted the exceptional surroundings we enjoy here in the DMV, especially in terms of American and world history. Want to see the Wright brothers' original airplane? No problem. Want to see an original Da Vinci? You're in the right place. How about the original Declaration of Independence? Easy peasy. But here in the DMV, it's also quite easy to go beyond mere artifacts and to actually walk in the same footsteps and into the lives of our founding fathers and mothers. Most all of it makes a splendid day trip from the DMV, too. You can visit the home of James Madison at Montpelier in Orange County, or the home of George Mason in Fairfax County. You could also visit the universities named after them. They're all close by. Today, we're going to be experiencing virtually the homes of two of our most important founders. Monticello, the home of Thomas Jefferson in Charlottesville. But first, we travel down the GW Parkway all the way to the end, and a visit to the illustrious estate of George and Martha Washington, Mount Vernon in Alexandria. Matt Briney is the Vice President of Media and Communications at George Washington's Mount Vernon. And here we are, the warmer weather is here, the pandemic appears to be lightening up, at least we hope so, and people are venturing out again. And one of the more popular places has always been in the Washington area, George Washington's Mount Vernon in Alexandria. Now, Matt, I mentioned to you once before that I thought the most magnificent piece of real estate in the entire Washington area was where George Washington's Mount Vernon sits today. I understand that I am not alone in that feeling.
You are absolutely not alone. First of all, there's over 1.1 million visitors per year that agree with you on that type of thing. But more importantly, George Washington agreed with you. In one of his most famous quotes was, there is no estate in all of United America more pleasantly situated than his home in Mount Vernon. So it was something all throughout the war, all throughout the presidency, was constantly on his mind, and he longed to be able to get back to life on his estate.
Now, the estate, he actually inherited the land, did he not? Was
he
it from
did,
his wife's family? From his wife?
No, it's from his half brother. So Lawrence Washington, his half brother, inherits it from his father, John Augustine Washington, and it's through this. So Lawrence Washington becomes ill with smallpox. Washington travels with him. It would have been very popular at that time if you were ill to find better weather. And so he travels to Barbados to try to overcome the smallpox. It's the only trip that George Washington takes internationally, but he goes with him. And unfortunately for Lawrence, he did not overcome the sickness. And so through that, for a brief period of time, it goes to his widow, and George Washington rents the property, but then ultimately inherits it full out.
It's funny, about 15 years ago, I myself traveled to Barbados, and every place we went, they wanted to be sure that we knew George Washington actually did sleep here.
Absolutely. You can still, the home that of which he and Lawrence shared is a destination site in Barbados. So if you don't go to Mount Vernon, please go see the Washington House in Barbados.
Upon touring the Mount Vernon estate, and I would assume every longtime resident of the D.C. area probably has at one time been through that mansion, but upon touring the estate itself and the grounds, what things might we learn about George Washington the man that weren't so obvious?
Well, and we hope that everybody comes out to see Mount Vernon at least once, but we also hope that if you haven't been in a long time that you do return, because our study, our interpretation is always changing as we are doing additional research. Mount Vernon, David McCulloch, the historian, wrote that Mount Vernon is is George Washington's autobiography. It's the best way to know who he is. And so with this, the Mount Vernon Ladies Association, who owns the property, has meticulously restored the rooms, the estate, back to the way it looked upon Washington's death in 1799. And we continue to do that today. Even this past year, we've redone 2 more of the rooms inside the mansion with updated research. Mm-hmm. And so the aim is to be able to tell a very complete story here. This is a place at which he entertained guests. It's a place at which he's showing off his vision for the future of the country. It's the place at which the early conversations about what the U.S. Constitution would look like happened. It's the last stop along the route, before going to the Battle of Yorktown, the decisive battle of the Revolutionary War. So if the walls could talk, the stories they would tell would be quite amazing. But fortunately for guests today, we have great interpreters that help you with those stories.
Well, the estate itself, I don't mean the mansion, but the grounds are massive, even though they might be a fraction of what they were during Washington's time. Now, George, as we know, was a soldier and statesman, but I would imagine that didn't leave a whole lot of time for farming. But what did go on the grounds of the estate? I know that there was farming. I know that there had to have been some fishing. What was going on there?
Well, and you're right. The estate in Washington's time was 8,000 acres. And for those that have visited Mount Vernon, to kind of put it in perspective, we only have 384 acres today, and only 160 of those are ones at which the guests can travel on. So it is a massive scale, 5 farms. And Washington always was most proud of him of being a farmer, and that's the occupation that he most identified with. And so what you'll see on the estate today are examples of the different farming techniques, the experimentation that he did. He is most known for transitioning his crop from tobacco, which would have eaten up the soil very easily and depleted it, to wheat. He did this not only because of the ability to restore the farmland through crop rotation, but also it allowed him to sell to a domestic market. And so really these are kind of the early sides of the revolution, the less dependence on Great Britain. But you'll see also on the estate we have pleasure gardens. We have gardens at which produce would have been grown of all different varieties, everything from strawberries to kale to beans. Washington was and Martha Washington were excellent guests and hosts, and they would guests always commented about the uniqueness of things that they could try while dining with the Washingtons, and so he was always trying to impress upon those that stayed with him. But the other thing you'll see is that it is a very much a working city. So Washington, today we can just go down to the local store and pick up whatever we need, but Washington's having to order goods from England or the Caribbean. He's doing it through merchants in Alexandria, he doesn't want to do this for everything that he has to order. He doesn't want to be dependent on that. 1, because it's expensive, but 2, just the idea that he's able to produce it. And so we're one of the fortunate historic estates that has preserved the outbuildings. And so you can see everything from a blacksmith shop to a salt house to a wash house, ice house, stables, all the operations of the estate. And probably more importantly, it's a way at which you can learn about the stories of the enslaved population who helped maintain the estate and allowed the Washingtons to be able to achieve what they did.
Well, the slavery issue is being re-examined, reinterpreted by historians all over the country now. And Mount Vernon itself, how is this story playing out in 2021?
Well, for us, the telling the stories of those that were enslaved at Mount Vernon really has been a part of the core mission, really since the 1980s and even before that. We've always had a tour that you could take, the Enslaved Life tour that shows, goes through the biographies of those that were enslaved here, the what their day looked like, their activities, their family life, and recently, within the past 3 years, we created a new exhibit in our museum, Lives Bound Together: Slavery at George Washington's Mount Vernon, that follows a deep research that was done by Mary Thompson and some of our other historians here at Mount Vernon to reconstruct a lot of their lives. And you really get to know a lot more about what the workload would have been like, the grueling demands, the arduous labor that they had to do, but also the signs of community, the family, the legacy of which many of the descendant communities, live still within the same area here, and call Mount Vernon still home. So it's a very emotional exhibit, and I would encourage people to come out and see it. It is a temporary exhibit. We are going to be it'll be off view in late July. So if you have a chance, please come out and see it.
Mm-hmm. One of the more recent headlines I've heard about Mount Vernon is that now the tour makes available some extremely high-tech virtual realities to, bring the estate to life as it was during Washington's time. Can you give us some insight on what a visitor might experience while there?
Well, I know you're referring to our augmented reality tour, and we, because of the COVID pandemic and just some low demand, we have canceled that. But what I can tell you is we do have several new kind of technologies that we have brought onto the experience. So the first is we have a wonderful 4-hour audio tour where it's individual devices that you just point at different things around the estate, and you can listen to stories from Washington, stories of those that labored here, information from our curators. So that's a wonderful tour. The other is B Washington. If you haven't seen our B Washington Theater, that is an impressive, immersive role-playing experience at which you can become George Washington. You can choose from advisors that he would have listened to and see it all up on the big screen. It even has Chris Jackson from Hamilton as the host for it. But you get to make the same decision that Washington did, and I would see, are you going to make the same thing that he did, or are you going to choose differently? And so we'd encourage people to come to the estate and play it, or if you can't come to the estate, go to bwashington.org and play it online.
Over the years, we've seen the Mount Vernon estate used in many a commercial enterprise. I remember, I think it was Sears Paint used it 1 year, 20 years ago. The Nicolas Cage movie, National Treasure, Book of Secrets. Are there any secret tunnels? What are the secret things going on at the Mount Vernon estate?
Sadly, there are no secret tunnels. It was a wonderful, we were very fortunate to be able to host the production of that, and also the Pelican Brief, if you've seen the clips from that as well. There have been many films over the year that have spent a little bit of time with Mount Vernon. What you do see in that film is the cornerstone that Lawrence Washington had for the mansion, and the original footprint of the building that he constructed there. That is available if you take our National Treasure tour. You can go into the cellar, go into the basement, see how how food and other things were preserved, how Washington's used that space, but then also learn a little bit more about the filming history and what that production still is our most popular tour today, that National Treasure tour. So it's a gift that keeps on giving.
All right. Now, the Mount Vernon estate, similar to Monticello, is up on the high ground, looking out over some beautiful scenery. Other than a good pair of walking shoes, how might a visitor to Mount Vernon this summer prepare to get the most out of that visit?
Well, there's going to be, you definitely want to be prepared to do a lot of walking. It is, as I mentioned, it is 160 acres that you can explore. I think another mistake that people make is they think that you're just coming out and seeing the house, but really that you can spend a whole day with us. We have outbuildings, we have movie theaters, we have a 25,000 square foot museum with 2 exhibit wings. There's a working farm, there's animals. So there's really everything for the entire family. And throughout the year, we're always doing special events. In fact, upcoming, we have our craft beer festival, our wine festival. We'll be celebrating the July 4th and naturalization of new American citizens, as well as our Independence fireworks. In the fall, we have our colonial market and fair, and in the holidays we also do Mount Vernon by candlelight, which will return this year. Very exciting, and so we're there's always something new to do. Even if you've been to Mount Vernon before, there's another way to experience it. And so we just encourage you to check out mountvernon.org and keep up to date with our calendar, sign up for our email updates.
I should tell you, you mentioned 8,000 acres, the original estate.
Yeah.
Many of those acres, I'm sure, have Van Metre homes on them today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, we have a program here at Mount Vernon that if you reside within the 8,000 acres, there's a plaque that you can get for your home that designates that you are on and that makes it official. It's in our registry. We keep the records in our library. So yeah, if you have any listeners that are in those areas, or of anybody, that's it's a wonderful program. Especially if you have friends that maybe are in historic Alexandria and they're very proud of their plaque. Well, here's a great plaque to add to your home too.
How lucky are we living in this area to have all these wonderful sources of our esteemed history and Virginia pride right in our own backyard. It's an extraordinary thing. Matt Briney, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Van Metre has been planting their roots and growing local communities for over 65 years. They are committed to building homes and providing a sense of belonging for all their homeowners. Now, it's your turn. Plant your roots, form deep connections to the surrounding community, and grow the life you want. Check out the new Van Metre neighborhoods currently blooming across Northern Virginia. Visit vanmetrehomes.com to learn more. As I was preparing for this interview on Monticello and our third president, Thomas Jefferson, my head began to spin. What should I focus on? Thomas Jefferson, the statesman, Jefferson, the scientist, the politician, Jefferson, the slaveholder. Well, while not perfect, in 2021, Thomas Jefferson still holds a position in American history that stands head and shoulders above all others. With us now is Holly Holanowski from Thomas Jefferson's Monticello in nearby Charlottesville. Holly, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for taking some time for us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Upon touring Monticello, what things might a visitor expect to learn there?
Well, Monticello is a word that means a few different things, as visitors learn when they come here. It is, of course, the name of Thomas Jefferson's incredibly unique home. But Monticello is also an Italian word that means little mountain. And that little mountain is where Thomas Jefferson decided to have his home built. But finally, Monticello is also the name of Thomas Jefferson's 5,000-acre plantation, where hundreds of enslaved people labored and lived. So when you come to Monticello, you will learn stories about Thomas Jefferson and his many accomplishments, stories about his family, stories about all of the enslaved families who lived and worked here, and also the story of the start of America.
Well, there's been has to be thousands of books written on Mr. Jefferson. I once read a massive book just on the construction of Monticello. Could you give us maybe the Cliff Notes version of that story?
Of course. Jefferson's home was a 40-year construction project. But that's not because it took 40 years to build a house back in the day. It's because Thomas Jefferson kept changing his mind. He said that architecture was his delight and that the putting up and pulling down was his favorite amusement. Jefferson is the architect and designs the house. Enslaved and free laborers then had to translate those blueprints into a reality. So, for example, carpenters John Hemmings, who was enslaved at Monticello, and James Dinsmore, who was a free Irish carpenter, worked together to create exquisite woodwork like the elliptical arch in the library and the beech and cherry wood parquet floor in the parlor. What's interesting is that Thomas Jefferson didn't go to school to learn how to design buildings. He taught himself by reading books. First, he studied Italian architecture, Andrea Palladio, and he comes up with a design for his Monticello. But years later, when Jefferson lives in Paris as the American ambassador, he's so inspired by European buildings that he completely changes the design of Monticello when he returns home to America. And that second big revision, that gives us the Monticello that we all recognize today. That's the Monticello with the big, beautiful dome on the west side, which of course is the view of Monticello that's on the back of the US nickel.
And what beautiful surroundings that mansion has. It's stunning. Slavery and the story of Sally Hemings is a large part of the story of Monticello, obviously. How does it play out at Monticello in the year 2021?
Well, when guests come to Monticello, they're visiting not only a house, but a plantation where hundreds of people lived, and the majority of those people were enslaved. Visitors will learn a full history of the plantation, including the stories of enslaved families like the Grangers, the Gillettes, the Hearns, the Hubbards, the Fawcett's, and the Hemings family. Guests can visit places where enslaved families lived and the spaces where they labored for Thomas Jefferson. We offer Slavery at Monticello tours to every ticket holder. In recent years, we opened an exhibit called The Life of Sally Hemings, which focuses on the words of Madison Hemings, who was one of the sons of Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson. For those who want a really in-depth exploration of the Hemings family, their experiences, and the legacies of slavery, we do offer the Hemings family tour. Guests can also explore an exhibit about something called the Getting Word Oral History Project, which began in 1993. And this project locates and records the oral histories of descendants of the enslaved families of Monticello. The Getting Word Project is also something that folks can access anytime on the Monticello website.
The Monticello website, I got to tell you, is an A++. I found maybe 20 minutes before we started this interview that Sally Hemings was actually a half-sister to Martha Jefferson, Tom's wife. They had the same father, I suppose. Didn't know that, but that's just what you'll learn at Monticello, even if you've been there 20 times like myself. I suspect many longtime residents of Northern Virginia have visited Monticello at least one time in their lives. And every time I visit, I'm surprised to find out many new things, like that fact I just pointed out. I understand there's now a visitor center. I haven't seen it yet. What goes on there?
So the modern version of the Monticello Visitor Center opened in 2009, and it acts not only as a visitor center, but also as an education center. The visitor center is the first place guests will encounter at Monticello, and they can take in a short film in the theater. They can also explore 2 floors of museum galleries and exhibits. Visitors also have a chance to enjoy a meal at the Monticello Farm Table Cafe if they like. Or they can visit the shops at Monticello and browse a huge collection of books, plants, seeds, gifts, and souvenirs.
I understand there's still a lot going on down at Monticello, a lot of new research and archaeological work. Is that still going on? Has anything significant been uncovered down there?
Oh, the archaeological work at Monticello has been going on for decades, and new discoveries are made all over Monticello Plantation. The archaeology department is especially important to our ability to interpret the lives of enslaved people who lived all over the plantation. For example, at Archaeological Site 6, which is about half a mile east from the mountaintop, archaeologists have turned up like a large amount of domestic artifacts, and that helps us to understand the lives of enslaved agricultural workers. One of those finds are multiple pieces of an instrument called a jaw harp. And that's a musical instrument. It's played with the mouth. And this type of discovery really gives us a window into not only the music, but the culture of enslaved communities at a site that receives no mention in Jefferson's records or writings.
Is that the instrument that goes boing, 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 something like that?
It
I'm
is
not
indeed.
sure. It is.
indeed.
One of my favorite things is to visit the flower gardens in the back of the mansion, because at any time of the year, they look great. And I see things, at least I think I see things I've never seen before. Am I going to be happy when I visit this summer?
Oh, absolutely. Our Gardens and Grounds department works year round to ensure that guests like you can enjoy the features like the beautiful flower garden, the walk surrounding Monticello's West Lawn, or the 1,000-foot vegetable garden that Jefferson used as his plant laboratory. We offer walking tours of the gardens to every ticket holder, where visitors can learn, not only about the plants and the landscape architecture of Monticello, but also about the Thomas Jefferson Center for Historic Plants. Their mission is to collect, preserve, and distribute historic and native plant varieties. As a matter of fact, if a guest sees a plant that they want to grow in their own garden, they can likely find that plant, or at least the seeds to grow it, at the Monticello gift shop.
Well, what we like to do here is let people know that Monticello is open. We hope the pandemic, the worst of it, is over. And how might a visitor planning to make a day trip out to Monticello, how might they prepare to get the most out of a visit like that?
Well, the first thing people should do when they're getting ready to visit Monticello is hop right on our website. It's going to be monticello.org. I recommend that you explore 2 online exhibits before you come, and then plan your trip here in person. The first exhibit online on our website that I recommend is called Paradox of Liberty. And this exhibit explores the complexity of our nation, which is founded on principles of liberty and equality, at the same time that 1/5 of the population was held in bondage. And the second online exhibition that I recommend is called The Declaration of Independence Around the World. Now, this exhibition explores how the words and ideas of the Declaration have impacted human rights all around the world for over 200 years. And then finally, I want everybody to go right to the ticketing and reservations page on our website and see what kind of experience is right for them before they arrive, because we offer lots of different experiences to fit the needs of every visitor and to also fit the amount of time that folks have to visit Monticello. Our day pass is great for everyone. It includes a guided tour of the house and grounds, as well as access to all of the exhibits and outdoor learning experiences on the mountaintop. That's for the entire day. If visiting Monticello is on someone's bucket list, then I highly recommend booking what's called a behind the scenes tour. Now, that's going to take you on a guided tour through all the floors of the house, and it includes a stop inside the famous dome room at Monticello. If your time is limited, or you're traveling with a group that needs flexibility, then the self-guided walkthrough tour is a great option for you, where you can explore totally at your own pace. And finally, for the ultimate experience, we do offer private guided tours, and that's where you and your group can see everything there is to see and explore Monticello in its entirety with a private guide hosting you all the way.
Wow. All I can say is I've been there many times. My first visit was in the 1960s, and now you can see the dome room. They never let people like me up there. You're telling me now I can see the dome room. I am so there, and I hope everyone, by the way, everyone, Holly is a tour guide at Monticello. So if you hear her on this broadcast, please let her know when you're down there. Holly Halanowski, thank you so very much for spending some time with us.
Thank you so very much, and we can't wait to see all of you here.
And now we wrap up the show with your host, Ernie Kyger.
Our founding fathers and their homes and writings and deeds can tell us plenty about our past as a nation. But perhaps they can tell us just as much about our future. They were men of the 18th century, but with a vision that went much further. Thomas Jefferson wrote to his friend Samuel Kercheval in 1821, Laws and institutions must go hand in hand with the progress of the human mind. As that becomes more developed, more enlightened, as new discoveries are made, new truths discovered, and manners and opinions change with the change of circumstances, institutions must advance also to keep pace with the times. We might as well require a man to wear still the coat which fitted him when a boy, as civilized society ever to remain under the regimen of their barbarous ancestors. For Van Meters Live in That DMV Life, I'm Ernie Kyger.
This has been Living That DMV Life, your guide to the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area, brought to you by Van Meter Homes. For more info on our communities in the DMV, visit vanmeterhomes.com.